start doing this. Okay, I think we have everything here, so we could just leave. Um, hey, do you want to talk about the new X-Men 97? Yeah, I do, actually. That's a good point. Now that you bring that up, I did want to actually talk about it. So, X-Men, what is it? X-Men 97. Dude, this freaking show, man. Um, there's a few things that I want to like actually discuss with regards to the show and being a fan of X-Men originally and growing up on Evolution, and then going back to watch the animated series was interesting. And I really, really, really enjoyed let's just talk about it like first. X-Men 97 is freaking amazing. It's awesome. It's like waking up to a Saturday morning cartoon and wanting to get that that feeling again, like when you were a kid, especially if you're an X-Men fan. But there's a few things that like okay, we'll do a minor spoilish review, like a general overview, and then we'll talk about like episode 1 and 2, which I think are the first ones you can watch on Disney Plus right now. Um, so overall, awesome, banger of a show, absolutely phenomenal. I freaking loved it from start to finish. But there's a few things. So I want to talk about like the the Jesus, my handwriting, the animation. That says animation, don't worry. The overall like the plot that we've got going on. We'll talk about the animation um last because there's a few things that I want to talk about with the regards to the animation that really kind of really throw me off. Um but so X-Men 97 opens up like swinging. It comes out the gate absolutely, it throws all its cards on the table. It does a few things well. It really sets the mood for the team of X-Men. It really reminds you that they're in the 90s, kind of almost a little bit on the nose. And it really holds up, I think, to the overall feel of the classic show while also bringing a sort of modern take to it. And I really, really, really liked it a lot. Like, so minor spoilers, and then we'll talk about episode 1 and 2. So the first, it picks up exactly where it left off in the original animated series. Xavier's assassinated, and that's the big point to be made here. And the team has sort of found themselves without a leader for the first time, and they're sort of pivoting it towards Cyclops trying to take up that role with a few sort of bumps in the road. Uh, but my favorite thing I think about the show to start off was um the opening sequence. The opening sequence of the show was so good. It reminds me so much of when I first watched X-Men Evolution and the animated series because I was really little. I'm like halfway a 90s kid, right? So I kind of got some of the stuff, but Evolution was like the show for me. And do you remember how it opens up with like Jubilee on the run and it's like, oh, this new sort of fascination with X-Men and mutants and things like that? The um the way it opens up with this character named Roberto, I won't spoil too much, but he's being rounded up by a whole bunch of anti-mutant people with the collars. They have these like mutant suppressant collars on. Storm shows up, they come blasting into the room. All the action sequences are phenomenal. And my absolute favorite part of the show is when Cyclops like busts in the room, he fucking flips his visor down, he's fucking fucking sliding around the room and shit like that. Oh my god, that was the coolest moment. And the reason why I like that so much is just a second. Hold on. So I was sitting there, you know, being Cyclops with the fucking headphones on. And the focus is all out. I have this like repair guy trying to come over and like check the furnace. He walks in like just as soon as I had the fucking headphones down. Yeah, that was hard to explain. Where was I? Anyway. So yeah, my favorite moment is like it really hypes up Cyclops, and I love Cyclops as a character. And I never used to. So to have him like come sliding in and it shows off his hand-to-hand capabilities, the fact that he is the leader, like a good team leader, he's fucking directing everyone around, and he's like the action sequences are so good. You have to see it. You have to see it. It's so good. He shows off his hand-to-hand capabilities, which is perfect. And then he does an optic blast, blasts himself back to dodge a shot, like fucking elbows some guy, then uses the momentum to blast another guy to the side to slide himself away. It's just so good. They did it so well. I love the way they treated the character. And then they sort of show off everyone else, and it's very 90s with its like, it really tries to ham up the like, this is the 90s show, right? Remember this animated series, because it does the not joke like almost immediately, like right off the cuff. And it's very much like trying to set up the perspective of this character named Roberto, who's a new mutant, who's being rounded up by all these sort of anti-mutant protesters and things like that. The only problem is so far with the first 2 episodes, they set up Roberto in like a way that's, they basically just set him up in the first episode, and you think that he's gonna like have this relationship with Jubilee as like a new friend, because Jubilee was in a very similar situation. It's almost like 1-for-1 of episode 1 or 2 of the original anime series. And then he just sort of like he just sort of fucks off. Like he's just gone. It's just like Roberto's just no more. And he's not really referenced anymore in the second episode so far, but he clearly has like a pretty significant mutant power. And my favorite line at the end was he sort of leaves Jubilee his card, and they're talking about like Jubilee's trying to convince him to stay and things like that, and he goes off, and he goes, you should page me. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, it's the 90s. It's not like a text or like send me a message or anything. It's page, which for anyone that didn't grow up in the 90s, there were these little things that you put on your belt, all right, and they would like one-line text messages. It was like a tweet. It was a device specifically made for a tweet, only for that significant device. It was called a pager. I know, wild. But yeah, there was little things like that really like pay homage to the original cast and things like that. And they really set up a lot of the characters in the show to really have an amazing time. The action sequences are so nice and so well animated, and the whole feel of the show, like I said, is like just there. It feels like I'm there watching an animated cartoon Saturday morning, bowl of cereal, fucking scoffing it down, waiting to see what happens next. And it really opens that, like, especially as an X-Men fan, it really opens up that sort of like childhood glee again. The one problem that I have with this show, I talk about how the animation is like amazing, right? Sorta. Man, my doctor handwriting. There's one thing, and I'll bring it up here. There's one thing that really bothers me. Okay, So Archer has this sort of certain animation style, right? It's a little bit uncanny valley. It's like it's a comedic show, so it's got like the way it's animated really plays well to its like comedy, right? And there's a few shows like this that sort of do the same thing. Like Venture Bros has a bit of a different animated style. Archer feels very much how certain dialogue sequences and close-up shots of X-Men 97 feel. So a scene that really shows this off is when they're close up, generally a headshot, like a talking head up close, and their eyes move, and then their head moves. And it's like paper sliding around, not really like an animated style or feel that fits everything else. So certain sequences don't really look like that. And I'm like, oh wow, this is like really amazing. Like Cyclops optic blasting. There's a part in episode 1 where where fucking Rogue, which is the greatest. It's just so good. Rogue literally like fucking like RKO's and body slams a sentinel, rips the head off and fucking chucks it into another one. Like there's certain sequences like that that are just magic, and the animation works so well, and it really kind of you sit back and sort of enjoy it for the homage it pays to the original series. But there's like a weird uncanny valley, and I can't quite put my finger on it, with how it's animated in the show with two people just having a conversation, if they're just talking one-on-one and it's close up. And it really reminds me of Archer, and it really throws me off, and it only happens a few times. I don't know if it's like the way the frames are animated, or if there's a few, or if it's missing a few frames, or if it's a little slow, but it's really strange, and it's really hard for me to look at like Magneto's menacing performance, and then his eyes will shift a little bit and he'll like move his head just slightly, giving off the speech, and I'm like, I'm watching Archer now. It really throws me out, and that's the one thing that I have a problem with the show, is that it does that. It's just small instances like that, but overall they really nailed the feel of it. And like I said, X-Men Evolution I think is underrated, and I think this is like up there with that for me, because the animated series always holds a special place in like all X-Men people that are a fan of X-Men. And now that we're sort of on the rise, because we've been dumpstered on for a while, I think it's a good time to be an X-Men fan. And it's good because it'll bring in new people, because if you're sort of on the fence about the animated show and you've never seen the original, I think it's a good place to jump in, get your feet wet, and encourage you to go see the original, because it'll reference a lot of things that happened in the original series, and it'll really like sort of maybe get you started and go see the original series and then watch the new one. I will say it was a pleasant surprise. I really, really loved it. I am biased because I'm a huge X-Men fan. I'm usually a DC guy, but X-Men was it. So yeah, that you were asking, that's my general sort of consensus over what the show was. Just a second. Yeah, we were paused. I guess I can talk like in depth more about what each episode was about. So we'll talk about like spoiler stuff now. So basically, how do we begin? Okay, episode 1, I talked about a little bit about. Okay, so spoiler section. All right, if this is going up on YouTube, I'll put a disclaimer. Spoilers. Jesus Christ, it's awful. So episode 1. Um, it opens up with how I described earlier. They're pretty much hunting down the remnants of these like sentinels and things like that. And Cyclops and the gang get on a lead for Master Mold, essentially. He closes out the show. Master Mold, the Sentinel, is like the baddie of the week, right? The thing is, I really enjoyed episode 1 for what it is to set up basically the foundation of the future of the show, which is possibly where it's going, with Magneto and Cyclops. So there's this really nice moment. You get this whole arc. Jean is pregnant. They're not sure if they're going to stay at the X Mansion. They're not sure if they're going to lead the team anymore because they want to raise their kid. And there's like turmoil within the team. Scott is pushing the team because he's not sure if they can handle themselves without him. And things like that. But it really rounds it off after they kill Master Mold. And they have a really good, like, sort of heartfelt moment where one of the UN officials was like, well, we have to hand it to you again. You pretty much saved humanity or something like that. You and your X-Men. And Scott goes, thanks, but I couldn't have done it alone. It was my team. It always has been. And that was like really, really nice. It was really, really sweet. You're like, yeah, Scott's come around. He's finally in a place where he can hand off the reins to whoever and they can move on because they want to raise their kid. Then it ends with them all discussing, having a nice heartfelt moment, blah, blah, blah. But they're wondering who's going to lead the team now. Then they have a breach in the X Mansion. Magneto comes in. They all rush to see who broke into Charles Xavier's freaking his spot, right? His office. And it's Magneto, who's come back. He was gone missing, but then he's come back. And it's found out that in the will of Charles Xavier, the entire estate and everything was left to Magneto. And the whole team is like just flabbergasted. They don't know what the hell is going on. Scott feels betrayed because he thinks that Charles didn't trust him enough to leave the team to him or things like that. And it ends with Magneto saying something along the lines of now you see what I used to see a long time ago, that even Charles Xavier can make mistakes. And he goes, it's good to see you, my X-Men. And it ends like that, episode 1, which is a great cliffhanger because you're like, oh fuck, okay, what's going on? Then we go into episode 2, and 2 really picks up because episode 2 it really starts to like push things forward. So Magneto's going around doing good deeds. He frees the Morlocks. They go on a mutant sort of city state of their own. He's trying to show that he's keeping his promise to Charles and doing, good, trying to see what humanity is through Charles's eyes. But the team doesn't trust Magneto, and most of all, Cyclops. So now he's having second thoughts on if he is going to leave, can he leave the team to Magneto, etc., etc. They end up having this like huge conflict at the UN because, as a show of good faith, and to pretty much circumvent everyone's expectations, Magneto turns himself in to a trial held by the UN. Of course, that ends up going awry, and the trial, there's a supposed assassination attempt on Magneto and the judges. They break through the lines. There's chaos happening. Oh, and also, while all this is going on, Jean is having her kid. Fuck. And there's a really funny sequence with the only one being there being Logan, because he's watching this on the news. Cyclops only took a certain amount of people, and he didn't tell Jean that he was like escorting and overseeing the trial of Magneto. So Logan's the only one there, like fucking trying to drive Jean over to the hospital, and then the hospital won't like deliver mutants. So they're trying to do that along while that the UN is like being attacked. So Rogue has to fly Cyclops over. There's all this like commotion and attack going on. And the Executioner is introduced, who's like specifically trying to shoot Magneto. And he talks about how he only has one shot in this gun. And if you freaking read the comics, you know how this goes. The gun is probably something that negates mutant powers. Turns out, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And Magneto is at his peak. He's like defending everyone. He has this giant shield up. He's saved the judges. And the Executioner gets one shot off. And man, it doesn't land on Magneto or anyone else like that. It lands on Storm. Storm goes in, body blocks Magneto, and she's like traumatized. She's like hit and in pain. She's looking around. She can't feel like the breeze, the dew on the morning wind, or anything else like that. She's lost her power, right? And Magneto's fucking pissed. He is furious. So he like essentially grabs everyone, the UN judges and the Executioner. He pins the Executioner up against the giant UN shield. It's a really, really powerful moment for Magneto. It's freaking awesome. And he's majestic as fuck, fucking hair and floating everywhere. He takes him up to the ape, like the crest of the atmosphere. And they're like, you can see the ice on the judge's breath, and everyone's like freezing, and Magneto has them in this giant sphere. And he has this great speech about how he could, he essentially has this like power over them. I don't want to spoil the speech. I really you should just watch it. And he's literally holding them in the palm of his hand. And it's this great imagery of him like looking down at Earth from the atmosphere. The sun's behind him. And he has the judges and the Executioner. And the Executioner's like visibly below him. And he's talking about how he can like crush any of them with like a single whim. Like his foot is like visibly above the Executioner. It's so well animated. The shot for shot of this sequence is one of my favorites. And it's really powerful. And Magneto says, but I will try to see Earth as Charles once did. And he looks down, and you see the globe and how like people and humanity, and he says, you don't need to, something along the lines, you don't need to coexist with us or something, you just need to accept us. And he ends up not killing them, which you think he would, because Storm is like lying down in pain. She has no mutant powers. He shows how you've oppressed us so much that this is how you wanted us, groveling at your feet, powerless. And the UN are like actively regretting fucking doing any of this because Magneto's there. But he ends up freeing them. So it closes off the episode with everyone gathering around. The UN accepts the mutant island as a nation into the UN. And you think, okay, Magneto seems to be turning a new leaf so far. And there's that quip that you see in the trailer where Scott hands Magneto a cup of coffee. And Magneto goes poison, and Scott goes dark roast or something like that. And it's really nice. It's just like this really like nice moments between the two, especially because if you read the comics, Dude, Cyclops, he's fucking amazing. And I don't know if they're going down that road, but we'll see. And again, when I was talking about the animation, that's another sequence where you kind of see Magneto's head and eyes shift around, and you're like, oh, that's Archer. That's weird. The animation's weird. But no, it was really good. And you think, okay, everything's like trying to be back to normal. The problem is Storm leaves. So she feels like she doesn't belong anymore, and that saying goodbye is the hardest thing that she could do. So she leaves a note to Jean, and Jean reads it off, and there's this like montage of everything going around, and Storm's letters really, 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 really powerful and heartfelt. And there's this one sequence, oh man, having Magneto be the monkey wrench in the tight group that is X-Men is wild, because Magneto and Rogue have a history. And Rogue is a she's a spicy waifu, okay? They rekindle their spark behind closed doors. All right, it just pans away. She takes off her glove. Magneto like touches her hand, and they like share a moment. Okay, it's pretty bad. Gambit knows, and is like, it pans to him like holding a card, and you just like, oh, fucking Gambit, dude. His heart is broken after that scene. It's bad. And it's this whole montage after Storm's leaving at the same time, and everyone doesn't know what's going on. It's like episode 2 is fucking heartbreaking, man. And then it ends with them all gathered around wondering what's going on, hoping that Storm comes back. Oh, and Morph's in it, by the way. Morph's amazing. He's hilarious. Still great. And they get a knock on the door, and they open the door, and they're like, what the fuck? And it's Jean. It's Jean Grey. And she goes, I need the X-Men's help, or something like that. She's like fucking crying. And like, Scott's looking at there. He's holding his kid. Jean's in the back going, what the fuck is going on? And then it just ends. So far, every episode really feels like a Saturday morning, like, this is it. Like, X-Men is back. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. And I'm so glad it's doing well. At least from what I can tell. I freaking love the show. It's amazing. And there's nothing too cheesy. There's nothing really like that seems to be sort of pushed at you. It just feels like a very fun time. And the only problem I have is that one little thing that I mentioned, the animation, man. It's just, it really throws me off. But everything else, like, is really nice. Like, I like it a lot. It's really good. So, yeah. X-Men 97. My expectations were, like, here. But after watching it, definitely recommend. It's actually, it's amazing that it actually makes me want Disney Plus now. You know? Like, it wants to keep it. Because before, I had no reason to keep this piece of shit. But now, Disney Plus. But yeah. Yeah, that's my take. That's my take on the whole stuff. So yeah. X-Men 97, highly recommend. Yeah. Go play it. Or go watch it. And then play friggin' X-Men Legends if you haven't, and all the other X-Men games, and be a fan. But yeah.